Hello and very warm welcome to this special podcast series called Digital Mandate, organized by B2B, the Founder Media. This is one of the podcast series wherein we host technology leaders from across the country, from different organizations who are actually driving digital transformation agenda for their respective organization. And today I'm joined by Mr. Prasad Wani, director at the Techpartner. This is one of the organizations which works across all the hyperscalers and provide cloud uh, services on-prem and both cloud and on-prem services. Mr. Wani, thank you
Hey, hi.
so much for taking out time for this podcast. Let me begin by asking you, the cloud has become the de facto platform for innovation. If you look at anything, anybody who is building, other than the hardcore air gap organization like government and defense organization, most of the innovation is happening in the cloud space. But that also brings to a question. Let's say if you are an organization, either you are starting or maybe you are running, you may have some application on the on-prem. If you are thinking to go to the cloud, okay, experiment with the cloud, what are couple of things that you feel is really important to think or visualize before moving into cloud?
Okay. So whenever anybody want to start any journey to the cloud,
Mhm.
basically cloud is such a thing that if you forget anything, it is going to cost you
Right.
because most of the time it is pay as you go model.
Right.
Whenever you start any instance or start any machine, it start costing you.
Right.
And we seen that people afraid of going to cloud because of there is a cost.
Right.
Okay. But when you put anything on-prem, it is a investment which you do upfront.
Yes.
But in cloud, what you have to do is when you pay only when you are starting the instance.
Right.
And what people need to think ki whenever they are putting anything into the cloud, they should make sure that what is their plan, what is their
Right.
growth plan,
Right.
and according to that, they should configure the infrastructure before even putting into that cloud.
Right.
Because let's say they don't want that type of a large machine.
Mhm.
Instead of creating a large machine, whatever they are considering, if they're running something on on-prem, which is a
Right.
huge machine,
Mhm.
but if they want to put some same machine into the cloud, it will cost a bomb for them.
Right.
So they should make sure they split their application into small application.
Right.
We call as a microservices,
Yes.
and then start the cloud journey slowly.
Right. I think you are absolutely right. It is really important that you understand what kind of the application you have. You rightly said, if there are some services which could be moved to the cloud and which could bring a scalability, agility, and also the cost arbitrage, especially from the microservice perspective. And those are the areas which should be basically experimented. Since your organization work across all the hyperscalers, also with the organization like Red Hat and OpenShift and all everything, from an NBFC perspective, I mean, especially the banking organization, they are of different sizes. You have the large bank, you have the smaller one, you have NBFC, you have the fintech. What are the new trend you are observing in terms of their capability to utilize either the on-prem or the cloud services?
Okay, so what we are seeing, the neo bank, we can call it,
Right.
they are born and brought up in the cloud because they are
Yes.
starting in the cloud itself.
Yes.
But the bank which are already there on on-prem, they are reluctant to move into the cloud
Yes.
because what they feel ki, where is my data going to be?
Right.
Is that data controlled by somebody else or is that data where it will be in my control? So we need to understand whenever we want to move to the cloud, it is a shared responsibility.
Yes.
Your data and all, it is your responsibility, but providing the infrastructure and making that infrastructure is not accessible to another,
Right.
that will be the cloud responsibility. So whenever such a banks or NBFC wanted to move to the cloud, they need to make sure that whatever they are putting in the cloud, they should make sure their proper security is there,
Right.
which will basically encryption of a data, that
Right.
they should make sure that.
Right.
Then access to that information, the way they are handling in the on-prem, they can similarly
Right.
do that on a cloud as well. But
Right.
whatever the responsibility, it is always been a shared responsibility when they are moving to the cloud. One more example I can give here is whenever anybody moves to the cloud, okay, what they normally do, they just consider that it is as good as my on-prem deployment.
Right.
It is not like that.
Not like
You need to make sure that whenever you are moving to the cloud, you try to choose such application which are smaller,
Right.
rather than taking entire step and building an entire machine to the cloud.
Right.
So once you understand how that application is running, how that database is running, then only take a step forward to move the other applications.
Yes. One of the positive reason, and most of the organization actually look at the experiment with the cloud, is because of the cost optimization. But you rightly said in the beginning that if you do not understand, have no better visibility, then possibly this cost optimization could become a bomb for you.
Correct.
Let's say if you create instances and you forget, but the meter is actually running in the back end, right? Now that brings me to some other question, which is, we are saying we are in a world where the data centers are heterogeneous. I mean, you have some application which is on-prem, some application moving to the cloud, and it's also depends on what kind of organization you are. So for example, if you are a large bank, that means you have already invested a lot in the traditional IT infrastructure, and because of regulation and fear of actually how application will run, you might not move to the cloud. But in some of the cases, some of the HR application and all, you can move to the cloud. How do you look the challenge of this heterogeneity in data center, wherein some application is in the cloud, some is in the on-prem? How do you ensure that everything for a business runs smoothly and you are able to optimize the cost also?
Okay. Again, for this, what I will say, it won't be a challenge. It is basically a planning,
Right.
Where people are running hybrid infrastructure. You are talking
Yes.
about having something on-prem, having something in the cloud. They are
Right.
running. People are running in a hybrid mode.
model.
But what they want to make sure that the connectivity between the data center
Right.
as well as with the cloud
Right.
has to be established, and that should be the way it should be done, that it can be supporting your bandwidth, whatever
Right.
the bandwidth you are procuring, it should be there. Because most of the time what we see, people start with some small bandwidth,
Right.
they connect over the IPsec VPN,
Yes.
and then they feel that I still have the connectivity, but I am not getting that performance.
Right.
This is because you are not going looking into the networking component.
Right.
Most people miss there. What we normally prefer, either if you are going with AWS or GCP, they provide a direct connect facility,
Right.
where your data center directly connect with the AWS.
Right.
Okay, so use such a technology which are already available,
Right.
and connect through them.
Right.
And that will make sure that your infrastructure, even though you are running in a hybrid mode, it will still work flawlessly,
Right.
irrespective of whether you are.
Right. Right. We are also seeing in some of the organization which is highly regulated, for example, government organization and some of the NBFCs on a banking organ, which might not be a cloud native organization. But there are bigger hyperscaler like AWS, Azure, and other players. They are actually putting, the data center kind of capabilities into a box and providing you on-prem
Correct.
service. How effective those are, and especially those people are, most of these regulated organizations are a bit attracted to that kind of, because you want the capabilities of AWS,
Correct.
the scalability and agility of AWS. But because of some constraint, at the board level, you don't want to put entire data in their cloud. So, for example, AWS had the AWS Post, right?
Right.
Wherein they provide you in a container kind of thing, and then you can run it. How effective those are? Have you ever come across any kind of those deployments?
There are few deployment which were done for the AWS Post for the
Right.
few of the bank. I won't take a name.
But yes.
And what will happen normally there, since it is not a pay as you go.
Right.
You have to invest immediately,
Yes.
and then only you will get that deployment. So if you are financially good, I will say that is one of the best solution, because you have the control, agility of AWS,
Right.
and you can do whatever things which are there, because it is just beside your data center. One
Right.
of the rack
Yes.
is just having that information with you.
Right.
So that can be done, but again, it is an expensive solution,
Right.
which we normally say. And again, if you see the guidelines of a government,
Right.
it doesn't say that you should not use a cloud,
Right.
or your data should not be on a cloud. What
Right.
they say, whatever you are putting in a cloud, make sure that it is in a control environment and not crossing the boundaries.
And also, it should be MITI impanel.
Correct,
Minister of
correct.
IT impanel. Right. No, you are absolutely right. But let me ask you one more thing. Especially for these days, we do see, data protection and security has become really important. And since you work across all these organizations, and your organization at the grassroots level, basically you, working with the customer directly in terms of the deployment and all, do you see any changes happening, especially because of some of the regulation which is coming, like DPDP Act is in place now? The government will ask most of the organizations to comply with that. Do you see something happening in
Yes,
the
yes.
data center?
There are lots of changes happening because everybody want to plan to classify their data.
Right,
Okay, which will consider as a PI data.
right.
Because again, there are thin lines.
Yes.
So they want to make sure that whatever I am having the data, I want
Yeah.
to comply with the government.
Right.
One more thing which previously government had, we should move, all the banking sector should move from IPv4 to IPv6.
6. Right.
There also we are helping them because
Right.
that is what basically government want. What whenever you are communicating to the outside, it should be a secure,
Right.
and that will be one of the steps.
Right.
So that is where I see that there are changes happening, but it is not happening at a pace.
Right.
It is taking some backseat because nobody want to declare that okay,
Yes.
this data is not a PI data.
Right.
This data I don't
Right.
want to put this, categorize this data.
Right.
So that is taking time, but yes, it is happening.
But now they will have to do it.
Correct, correct.
The moment the auditing start coming,
Right.
Let's say down the line in a year and also obviously they will have to do it.
Yes, there are queries coming from the client. How can you help us to classify our data,
Right.
which will immediately help us.
Yes, yes, sir. So before I let you go, one last question I would like to understand, because you work at the cutting edge level. What are the couple of things in terms of trends you are observing in terms of the cloud consumption or either the on-prem deployment of technology? What you are observing from the market?
So I am observing that lot of people basically trying to use a cloud just as a temporary test.
Yes.
Okay, they don't want to use or migrate their production workload into the cloud directly as a day one.
Right.
But as a tech partner, what we like to suggest to them is use a cloud just as a production, because it is not going to harm you. It is just a shared responsibility that is going to bind you with a hardware differently and with a data differently.
Right.
But we don't see any challenge of running the production workload in the cloud.
And also there is no vendor lock-in. I mean, you have the container and Docker and all where you can migrate things
from anywhere.
one part. Absolutely. Thank you so much, sir, for taking our time for this podcast. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.